The problem with all that is everything that Jesus said about himself, which goes back to why we have to read the Bible. Because everything Jesus said about himself does not allow him to be put into any of those categories as just being a good teacher. Matter of fact, they called him good teacher one time, and he said, who's good? You know, who's good? There's all these things that he continues to come back to. It's like, no, that's not how I define me. You have to know how I define me. So let's look at the Gospel of John. I'm just going to give you 3 passages really quickly that just kind of foundational, right? These are foundational passages in terms of Christ. It says, Jesus answered, this is the Pharisees, if I want glory for myself, it doesn't count. But if it's my Father who wants to glorify me, then you say, well, he's our God. Because this is the Jewish people, right? Well, no, he's our God. But you don't even know him. I know him, and if I said otherwise, I'd be a great liar as you. But I do know him, and I obey him. And it says, your father Abraham, talking about their father of the faith, right? Your father Abraham rejoiced as he looked forward to my coming. He saw it, and he was glad. And I love this. People then are like, man, you're not even 50 years old, right? How can you say that you've seen Abraham? And again, here's what Jesus says. He answers, well, I tell you, before Abraham was ever born, even born, I am. Which, by the way, is the word they're not allowed to say because it invoked the fact that it was the I am from the Old Testament. And he was like, yeah, before Abraham was born, right? That's what and listen, watch this. At that point, they picked up stones to throw at him. But Jesus was hidden from them and left the temple. Guys, you got to remember, they did not crucify Mr. Rogers. Everybody with me? Like, he was not a nice guy. You can't qualify him and just say, well, he was a really nice guy. He upset everybody. Okay? He did. And his teachings would divide people. And at one time, a crowd was following him, and they basically said, a bunch of stuff they didn't understand, and then they started to leave. It was fly by night. Well, he's not feeding us lunch today, so we're gone. I mean, it just goes back to this is not who Jesus said, I am. You need to know that it's not just John who's going to talk about me as I am. I'm saying it. Red letters, I am. John 8 says it this way. We were in John 8. John 10. Jesus replied, I've already told you, again, talking about who he is. You don't believe me. The proof is in the work that I do in my Father's name. If you don't believe me, because you're not my sheep. Right? He's like, my sheep, because this is all about the great shepherd in John 10. He's like, my sheep listen to my voice. I know them and they follow me. He says, I give them eternal life and they will never perish. No one can snatch them from me. And he says, for my Father has given them to me and he is more powerful than anyone else. No one can snatch them from the Father's hand, and the Father and I are one. Not one mind, not one alignment, not one purpose. The word he's using is the Father and I in Greek are logos. We are one. That is who we are. And again, we can get lost in the Father-Son language, which is what Jesus used, I believe, to help us, to help our finite brains try to make sense of things. He says that's the way it is. And of course, this verse in John 14. Jesus tells them, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me. He says, if you'd really known me, you know who my Father is. And from now on, you do know him because you have seen him. Once again, very similar to what John said in John 1. If you want to know what God looks like, Jesus. If you want to know what God says, Jesus. If you want to know what God believes, Jesus. If you want to know what God, his view towards things, Jesus. That's the example, the physical, visible example that we have been given.